What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do you all remember the time when we were talking about the Series S and how many people had claimed somewhere, somehow, that it was holding the generation of gaming back? This came a lot from the PlayStation 5 players. It seems to me now that somewhere, somehow, just someone's opinion about how we're seeing that in these new releases, console seems to be having more stable performance than PC ports or PC versions. I'll put it as that because actually the console version is the port since the game is being made on PC. It's just a PC build, which is the core build that the developers seemingly are not finishing their optimization. To that, an audience member of mine has concluded that the PlayStation 5 is king when it comes to actually these new AAA games if you want to get the best performance out there. Now, to that, I have to push back, and there's a reason you're seeing the Callisto Protocol video in front of us. Many of you remember that when we were talking about the Series S thing, I used this particular video where Glenn Schofield, who was actually in charge of the development of that game, said how it was very difficult for them to basically take that game in the middle of development and then have to get new consoles done, and then also forcing them to ship the game before he thought it was ready. They will not take any more, hey, we need more time. And so the game actually showed up the way it was. An audience member of mine seemingly is pointing to PC as the problem with these games, when in reality, we've had decades of PC versions of games or PC builds that have run way better than the consoles could ever run. The onus in this particular case is very simple. This is a matter of the developers themselves actually dropping the ball in their development. If a game is fully optimized, the game is going to work well. The developers will change what's needed: assets, mesh, character, animation, quality. They'll pretty much do much more different kinds of threading to be able to allow for the game to run and utilize all of the hardware as effectively as possible, which is a very, huge and difficult task to do. And what you've noticed and what we've seen is even when these games come out with bad ports, after a few minutes, they go ahead and fix it. And then you always have to wonder and say, well, was it actually the fact that the hardware was not good, or were the developers just not in a place where they could finish their work, or the publisher pushed the game out before it was done? The age of being able to push updates has pushed developers to the point, and even publishers, where they want to always capitalize on this and make it seem like, they're going to eventually get the game out and patch it because of the hyper competitive nature of gaming. But this is not to say that somewhere, somehow, a PlayStation 5 console is going to perform better than a PC that is in the same hardware class and category when you actually do an apples to apples comparison as best as you can. And when I say as best as you can, I mean just because both, hardware pieces will function differently because desktop has dedicated functionality in terms of its CPU and GPU. So this brings me to Digital Foundry, where they're talking about Silent Hills 2 remake on PC and how basically visually it's a good game, but it has a lot of stutters attached to it. At the end of the day, the conclusion is very simple, and you can see it pretty much from here. It's all based on pretty much the developers, Windows themselves in some cases with their updates, and also Epic Games with their engines. However, I have to also tell you guys, ladies and gentlemen, that the answer is actually lying in the developers. Because Unreal Engine has been getting a bad rap, but they are basically the engine owners that do a lot of training overall for people who choose to use Unreal Engine. They are constantly pumping out content, even more sometimes than a lot of the other people that are always talking about them. You can already see a PlayStation hyper fan. Shout out to Doug Dark. I did not know that Peter Rock was your brother, but it appears to me that he likes PlayStation and he does not like the PC platform. You, on the other hand, you have a more open mind to it. Maybe you can help him realize and see that once, it's all said and done, the platforms have more complexity than, it's actually available for, say, or comparable to the console side. He said, start using these $700 PC builds instead of the $4090 to do a head-to-head analysis, and would love to see how these games run compared to the PS5 Pro. Again, this is a matter of the developers actually having the resources to finish their game. Many of you remember Callisto Protocol PlayStation version was the best and most functional version. But what was actually different about that PlayStation version? It was simply the fact that these folk at Krafton were able to get engineers from PlayStation to actually help them with many aspects of their game. In this interview, Glenn Schofield said they got that PlayStation 5 development kit, and he said it didn't even come with user manuals that was in English that they could understand. He said it was so complex for them that they just had all these different things that actually went with it. And so you can already tell that a game like this did not have enough time to cook in the oven. Mr. Protorock, seeing you in a public forum here, I have to address your comment. This is not a matter of the hardware. Why? That $700 PS5 Pro is an AMD blown device as well. It, in its own right, if it actually had the exact same builds that was used on PC run on it, it will perform exactly the same way. The challenge, though, is in the console versus PC side, PC doesn't have as much regulation in the sense that they'll do all the settings to be able to stabilize with that one platform itself. And because these publishers are pushing these guys to push these games out, they're no longer taking time to optimize their game anymore for PC hardware. Many of you who've actually played a lot of games on PC who have, libraries of old games, you already know that this is a result of the publishers not wanting these developers or letting these developers sit there to actually push out their games in the most stable way. I mean, I can even show you from two of my most played games, MK11 and MK1, the performance is night and day, and it came out from the exact same studio. These two games are different. One runs beautifully well. It was an Unreal Engine 3 game. The other one is an Unreal Engine 4 game, which is actually an engine that has way more in terms of its knowledge base than Unreal Engine 5 and more experience in terms of optimization. And I can tell you that MK1 is a piece of junk in terms of comparing it to MK11 in its performance and its stability. So this is not a matter of, say, the PC or the whatever, because MK11 ran almost flawlessly, if not flawlessly, on a PS4. And it came from the exact same studios that's basically been making those versions. Whereas the MK1 version is a bunch of junk on any console that you want to play it on. When it feels like it wants to break, it'll break really bad. Now, many of you have seen the bugs for MK1, right? They're all over the place. Even on PC, we had less bugs, but they did not spend time cooking that game up. And it even showed in some of the functionality that was missing. There were modes that were missing in MK1 that we literally could not actually select. So basically for a year, we played the beta version of this game. And that is what is going on across the board, where these companies are optimizing their games for the PC platform, but are not necessarily, except for the PC, for the console platforms, but they're not giving themselves enough time to actually optimize for PC. Because when they eventually do go optimize for PC, do you know what you get? You get beautiful, playable, delicious Gotham Knights at 90 FPS if your machine can actually afford to do it. This is crazy, right? This is the same Gotham Knights on PC that you could barely play. Now I can play this thing on a 2060 build and get laptop, not even a build, like a 2060 laptop. I've even shown videos on this channel before that I captured for it. I can play the thing on a 1080 Ti with an i7-7700K old hardware, and I will get good frame rates across the board because they finally went around to stabilize it. The misinformation is about to start spreading, and someone's got to actually point out that, again, before this stuff gets poisoned, that PC is the fault when the hardware in a PC and the hardware in a console are basically comparable. We got to make sure that people don't go around lying to other people, because this is a matter of the developer. And because it's now convenient for this so-called console war, everybody wants to turn it now to the PC platform. You will fail. The reason you will fail is because there's a body of games all over the place that we can move through the PS3, the PS4 generation, the Xbox 360, Xbox One, and we can see how their performance does or did back then, even on PCs that were available at the time. They weren't comparable, but they were available PCs back then. So let's go ahead and ensure that we're keeping the energy levels with as much consistency as we possibly can, because again, it's about to get really nasty up in here, and I'm not going to be quiet about it. In fact, this audience member of mine, after we finished talking, I started asking them, I said, what PC build do you run? And again, show me, I kept asking them, show me all these PC games that you're talking about. And they said they had to go and all that. So what I did was I'm downloading Callisto Protocol on Xbox. I'm going to look at footage of some of the parts that we had so-called stutters, and we're going to compare to see how these versions of the game are running. I wish there were more channels like Digital Foundry out there, because it seems like they were the ones that were willing to do a lot of the hard work initially, so a lot of people deferred to them. But there are many, many more games that are out there, and a lot of these big games that they will focus on in terms of the performance are the ones that get traction more than anything in the whole conversation. So everyone is thinking or getting the perception that PC is the problem, when in reality, the devs not finishing their work before putting the game out, that is the problem that we need to be looking at. Thanks for watching the video. We'll talk a little bit more. Peace out.